The silver ships appeared on a Tuesday morning. They came out of nowhere, suddenly filling Earth's orbital space like stars that decided to move closer. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The sensors at the defense stations couldn't get an accurate count because the ships kept moving in perfect formation, like a school of metallic fish swimming through the darkness of space. Taeyang Park was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency call came through. He was Earth's ambassador to alien species, though until that morning there had been no alien species to talk to. Humanity had searched the stars for 200 years and found nothing but empty planets and dead rocks. Now the aliens had found them instead. The first message came in their own language, perfect English. The voice was cold and mechanical, but the words were clear. They called themselves the Vrelnath Empire. They had been watching Earth for 3 months, learning human languages by listening to radio and television broadcasts. They knew everything about humanity, and they were not impressed. Taeyang stood in the command center alongside Director Nari Huang, who ran Earth's defense network. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Around them, screens showed the alien fleet from every angle. The ships were beautiful in a terrible way, all smooth curves and gleaming metal. They looked like weapons built by someone who cared about art. The alien commander introduced himself as Krath. His image appeared on the main screen. He was tall and insect-like, with 4 arms and a face that looked like it was made for biting. His skin was dark purple, covered in what looked like natural armor. When he spoke, his mouth parts moved in ways that made Taeyang feel sick. Krath explained their situation very simply. The Vrelnath Empire ruled 47 star systems. They had conquered 23 different alien species over the past 800 years. Earth would be number 24. Humanity had 1 day to surrender, 1 full rotation of their planet. After that, the Empire would take Earth by force. Taeyang tried to negotiate. That was his job. He had spent 20 years learning how to talk people out of fights, how to find common ground, how to make everyone feel like they won something. He offered to share Earth's technology. He promised resources, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, anything but surrender. Krath listened with what might have been amusement. When Taeyang finished, the alien commander made a sound like clicking stones. It was laughter. The Vrelnath did not negotiate with primitives. They did not trade with species who still used chemical rockets. Earth had nothing the Empire wanted except the planet itself and the labor of its people. Surrender or die, those were the only choices. Juan Li tried next. She was Earth's best xenolinguist, someone who studied alien languages and cultures, except there had been no aliens to study until now. She sent the Vrelnath everything beautiful that humanity had created. Music from every culture, paintings and sculptures, poetry in 100 languages. She wanted them to see that humans were not just primitives. They were people with souls. The Vrelnath response came back in 3 hours. They had analyzed everything. The music was mathematically interesting but emotionally meaningless. The art showed technical skill but lacked the sophistication of truly advanced species. The poetry was just noise arranged in patterns. Jiwan cried when she read their analysis. She had believed that any intelligent species would recognize beauty. She was wrong. Captain Minho Cha commanded the orbital defense station called Unity. It was the biggest platform humans had ever built, armed with missiles and railguns and laser batteries. He knew it would not be enough. The sensors showed him what the Vrelnath ships could do. Their shields could stop anything Earth threw at them. Their weapons could crack a city open from orbit. But Minho prepared his station anyway. If Earth was going to die, it would die fighting. With 6 hours left on the deadline, Taeyang made one final attempt. He requested a private channel to Krath, just the 2 of them, commander to ambassador. Krath agreed, probably curious about what desperate nonsense the human would try next. Taeyang spoke carefully. He told Krath about Earth's history, the wars that nearly ended everything, the nuclear weapons that could turn the whole planet into ash, the biological weapons that could kill every living thing, the artificial intelligence systems that went rogue and had to be shut down before they decided humans were a problem to solve. He explained how humanity had built weapons so terrible that they scared themselves. Weapons they had locked away and promised never to use again. He warned Krath, "Turn back. Take your fleet and leave. Earth is not what it appears." Humans survived by learning to build terrible things, then learning to control themselves. The old weapons still exist, sealed away in places nobody talks about. If the Vrelnath force humanity to choose between surrender and survival, they will choose survival. And they will use everything they locked away. Krath listened to the whole speech. Then he laughed again. That clicking, grinding sound. Every species said the same thing when faced with conquest, he told Taeyang. Every primitive culture claimed to have hidden weapons, secret defenses, terrible powers waiting to be unleashed. None of them ever had anything real. It was always desperation and lies. The Vrelnath had heard it all before. The alien commander leaned closer to the camera. His face filled the screen. He told Taeyang that he had personally conquered 6 worlds. He had heard the same warnings on everyone. Please turn back. You don't understand what we can do. We have powers you cannot imagine. And every time it was nothing but fear talking. Every species broke when the real fighting started. Earth would be no different, Krath said. Humans would surrender or die. Their warnings meant nothing. Their hidden weapons did not exist. The deadline stood. 23 hours remaining, the channel closed. Taeyang sat in the dark command center staring at the blank screen. Around him, people rushed back and forth preparing for war. Nari was shouting orders, moving defense satellites into position. Jiwan sat in the corner, her face pale. Somewhere above them, Minho was loading weapons that would barely scratch the alien shields. Taeyang pulled up a classified file on his personal tablet. It was marked with red warnings and required 3 different security codes to open. Inside was a list of 47 locations around the world. Facilities that officially did not exist. Weapon systems that were supposed to have been destroyed 200 years ago during the Great Unification, when humanity decided to stop trying to kill itself, except they had not been destroyed. They had been sealed away, locked behind enough security to make sure no single person could ever activate them alone, buried deep enough that people could forget they existed, but preserved just in case. Just in case humanity needed to remember what it was capable of. Nari appeared beside him. She did not ask what he was looking at. She already knew. They had talked about this possibility before, late at night after a few drinks speaking in hypotheticals. What would Earth do if something came from the stars that wanted to destroy them? Would they die as the peaceful species they had become? Or would they remember how to be the monsters they used to be? Taeyang looked up at her. They needed authorization from the World Council. They needed to open the seals on 47 facilities simultaneously. They needed to do it quietly without the Vrelnath noticing. And they needed to do it in less than a day. Nari nodded. She was already making calls. The council was gathering. The codes were being retrieved from their separate vaults. All around the world, old soldiers who remembered the bad days were being quietly contacted. Deep underground, in places marked as abandoned on every map, lights were beginning to turn on for the first time in 2 centuries. Taeyang watched the alien fleet on the screens. They floated there confident and deadly. They had refused to hear the warning. They had laughed at humanity's last peaceful offer. Now they would learn what humans were capable of when all the other options were gone. Earth was about to become a trap, and the Vrelnath had just walked into it. The Vrelnath attack began exactly when they said it would. The moment the deadline expired, their fleet moved. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, like watching a storm roll across the ocean. Hundreds of ships moving as one, each knowing exactly where to go and what to do. They had done this before, many times before. The first wave hit Earth's orbital defenses, electromagnetic pulses that made electronics scream and die. Defense satellites went dark one by one. Communication networks failed. Power grids flickered and collapsed. In less than an hour, Earth lost most of its ability to coordinate a defense. The Vrelnath did not waste shots. Every strike hit exactly what it needed to hit. Nari Huang watched her carefully built defense network fall apart. Each blinking light on her screens represented a weapon system, a satellite, a command post. She had spent 10 years building this network. The Vrelnath destroyed it in minutes, but she did not panic. This was expected. This was part of the plan. The second wave came from orbit. Kinetic strikes. Metal rods dropped from space, moving so fast they hit like nuclear bombs, but without the radiation. Military bases exploded. Shipyards turned into craters. Weapons factories became smoking holes in the ground. The Vrelnath were thorough. They knew where everything important was located. They had been watching for 3 months after all. Captain Minho Cha fired everything Unity Station had. Missiles streaked toward the alien fleet. Railgun rounds followed, moving at incredible speeds. Laser batteries burned at maximum power. For a few beautiful moments, it looked like Earth might have a chance. The weapons reached the Vrelnath ships. They struck home and did nothing. The shields absorbed everything. Some ships showed minor damage, scratches on their perfect hulls. That was all. Mino watched his best weapons bounce off the enemy like rocks thrown at a tank. He had known it would happen, but seeing it still hurt. 3 Vrelnath cruisers broke formation. They moved toward Unity Station with clear purpose. Mino ordered an evacuation. Most of his crew made it to the escape pods. But someone needed to stay behind and keep firing. Someone needed to buy a few more minutes for the pods to get clear. Mino volunteered himself. He died when the cruisers tore Unity Station apart. But before he died, he aimed one final railgun shot not at the ships but at the lead cruiser's command bridge. At that range, fired with Unity's full power, even Vrelnath shields could not stop it completely. The round punched through and killed the cruiser's captain. It was a small victory, but Earth needed any victory it could get. On the surface, the real fighting began. Vrelnath dropships fell through the atmosphere like burning stars. They landed in major cities around the world. New York, Tokyo, London, Mumbai, Lagos, São Paulo, Seoul. The ships opened and warriors poured out. The Vrelnath soldiers were bigger than humans, covered in natural armor and carrying weapons that could burn through concrete. They moved in perfect formations, never breaking ranks, always supporting each other. They had done this on 23 other worlds. They knew how to conquer a planet. Captain Hyejin Seo commanded a marine unit in Seoul. She had 200 soldiers and orders to defend the city's main power station. If it fell, millions of people would lose electricity. She knew her unit could not win, but they could slow the enemy down. Her Marines used every trick they knew. They hit the aliens from buildings and disappeared before return fire arrived. They collapsed streets to slow the advance. They used the city itself as a weapon, turning familiar ground into a deadly maze for the invaders. For 6 hours they held. 6 hours of desperate fighting, watching friends die, running out of ammunition, falling back block by block. The Vrelnath brought up their heavy machines. War robots that stood 3 stories tall, armed with cannons that could level buildings. Hyejin knew it was over. She gathered her remaining Marines, maybe 40 left out of 200. She told them they had done well. Earth would remember them. Then she did something crazy. She charged the nearest war machine. Just ran straight at it, firing her rifle, screaming in rage and defiance. Her Marines followed her. They all knew they were going to die. But if they had to die, they would die showing these aliens that humans did not surrender easily. Hyejin managed to get close enough to throw a grenade into the machine's leg joint. It exploded and the machine stumbled. In that moment of confusion, she jumped on it and climbed toward the control cabin. She fired her rifle through the armored glass until it cracked. Then she pulled out her combat knife and jumped inside. She killed the Vrelnath pilot before they killed her. The machine crashed into a building. The whole thing was broadcast on news channels that were still working. Millions of people watched a human Marine take down an alien war machine with nothing but courage and a knife. Hyejin became a hero in the last minutes of her life. Her final words over the radio were simple. They can bleed, but heroes could not stop an empire. Within 3 days, the Vrelnath controlled every major city on Earth. Within 5 days, they controlled the orbital space completely. Within a week, organized military resistance had collapsed. Small groups of soldiers still fought in mountains and forests, but they could not change the outcome. Earth had fallen. Commander Krath established his headquarters in Geneva. He took over the building that used to house Earth's Defense Council. He sat in the same room where Taeyang had tried to negotiate. The irony amused him. Another world conquered, another primitive species defeated. Everything had gone according to plan. His tactical analyst Thex reviewed the battle reports. The conquest had actually gone faster than expected. Human resistance, while brave, had been ineffective. Their weapons were too weak. Their tactics were too simple. They fought well for primitives, but they were still primitives. The report concluded that Earth could be fully pacified within 1 solar rotation. Maybe less, but Thex noticed something odd. He brought it to Krath's attention. The human military retreat patterns looked strange. Units had pulled back in very organized ways. Not like armies running in panic, but like armies following a plan. And they had abandoned certain areas completely, 47 specific locations across the planet, according to the scan data. Underground facilities, mountain complexes, deep ocean sites. Krath examined the data without much interest. So humans had secret bunkers. Every species did. They were probably refugee centers or supply caches. Nothing important. Thex suggested sending teams to investigate. Krath refused. Why waste resources on empty bunkers when there was a whole planet to secure? If the locations mattered, the humans would have defended them. Instead, they abandoned them. Clearly they were not important. Thex accepted the decision but felt uneasy. In his long military career, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something felt wrong. The humans had fought too hard in some places and given up too easily in others. The pattern did not make sense, but he was just an analyst. Krath was the commander. The decision was made. On the 7th day of occupation, something unexpected happened. Ambassador Taeyang Park contacted the Vrelnath command. He came out of hiding from a bunker in the Rocky Mountains. His message was broadcast on all frequencies, both human and alien. He said that Earth's military had been defeated. The remaining forces would stand down. He requested a meeting with Commander Krath to discuss surrender terms. Krath was pleased. This was how it always ended. The fighting stopped. The defeated species accepted reality. Then came the formal surrender, the treaties, the integration into the Empire. He agreed to meet Taeyang. In fact, he would make it a ceremony. He would broadcast it across all Vrelnath territory. Another conquest for the history books. Another proof that the Empire could not be stopped. Thex watched the preparations with growing concern. 7 days was not enough time to break human resistance. They had fought too hard to give up so quickly. And Taeyang's message had been too calm, too controlled, like someone following a script. Like someone who knew something the Vrelnath did not. He ran new scans of those 47 locations. The sensors showed nothing. Empty buildings. Abandoned facilities. No power signatures. No life signs, nothing. But the more Thex looked at the data, the less he trusted it. The readings were too perfect. Too clean. Like someone had designed them to show exactly nothing. He tried to warn Krath again. But the commander was too busy preparing for the surrender ceremony. The conquest was complete. Earth was defeated. What could possibly go wrong now? Thex had no answer, just a bad feeling that kept getting worse. A feeling that they had not conquered Earth at all. A feeling that they had walked into something terrible, and the door was about to close behind them. The surrender ceremony was planned for Geneva. Krath wanted it in the ruins of Earth's old United Nations building. The symbolism was perfect. Where humans once pretended to unite, they would now submit to the Empire. Thousands of Vrelnath warriors lined the halls in their best armor. News crews prepared to broadcast to 47 conquered worlds. Another victory celebration. Taeyang arrived with a small group. Jiwon was there, looking tired and sad. Nari came too, her face showing nothing. They wore formal clothes, not uniforms. They carried no weapons. They looked like people who had accepted defeat. They looked exactly like every other species the Vrelnath had conquered. Krath gave a long speech. He talked about how the universe worked. The strong ruled the weak. The advanced guided the primitive. Humans had fought bravely, he said. They should be proud of their courage. But courage without power meant nothing. Now they would serve the Empire. In serving, they would find purpose. In submission, they would find peace. Taeyang listened quietly. When Krath finished, there was a long silence. Then Taeyang spoke. His voice was soft, almost sad. He thanked Krath for the speech. He said humans had indeed learned about the natural order. They learned it the hard way through centuries of war. Humans had killed each other over religion, resources, land, ideas. They had nearly destroyed themselves several times. But they learned something important, Taeyang continued. They learned what happens when someone refuses to listen to warnings. They learned what desperation makes you do. They learned how to build weapons so terrible that using them felt like the end of the world. And then they learned to lock those weapons away and pray they never needed them again. Taeyang activated a hologram. It showed Earth from space, blue and beautiful. Then the image changed. Layers peeled away, showing what was hidden beneath the surface. 47 locations, 47 facilities. The ones Thex had been worried about. The ones Krath had dismissed as unimportant. They were not empty. They had never been empty. They were shielded with technology that made Vrelnath scanners see nothing. And now those shields were dropping. Now, the facilities were waking up. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a massive complex came to life. Project Prometheus, an orbital weapons platform controlled by advanced artificial intelligence. It had been built during the Third World War, when humans needed to strike anywhere on the planet within minutes. It could fire metal rods from space with the force of nuclear bombs, but without the radiation. It had been shut down for 150 years, locked away, forgotten, until now. In the deepest part of the Mariana Trench, pressure seals released. Something rose from the darkness. Project Leviathan, biological machines designed to build space stations in the harshest environments. They could survive in the vacuum of space. They could eat metal and rock. They could grow and multiply. During testing, they had escaped and eaten an entire research station. The project had been sealed underwater where nothing could reach it. Until now, across the Sahara Desert, sand began to move. Something emerged that had been buried for 2 centuries. Project Sandstorm. Billions of tiny machines, each smaller than a grain of sand. They could find any electronic device and disable it. They could replicate themselves using any metal they found. During testing, they had nearly destroyed all electronics in North Africa before being stopped. They had been buried deep under the desert. Until now, 47 installations. 47 weapons that humanity had built in its darkest moments. Things created by people who were desperate and terrified, and willing to do anything to survive. Things that scared humanity so much they locked them away and promised never to use them again. Until an arrogant empire refused to listen to warnings. Nari spoke next. She explained what had really happened during the 7 days of fighting. Every battle had been carefully planned. Not to win, to gather information. Human forces had tested Vrelnath shields, weapons, tactics, communication systems. They had learned everything they needed to know. Every retreat had led Vrelnath forces exactly where humans wanted them. The surrender ceremony itself was timed for when the Vrelnath fleet was in perfect position. Earth had not been conquered. Earth had been setting a trap. And the Vrelnath had walked right into it. Krath suddenly understood. He screamed orders to his fleet, retreat, scatter, get away from Earth, but it was too late. The Sandstorm nanomachines had already infected the Vrelnath communication systems. Commands went nowhere. Ships could not coordinate. The perfect fleet formation broke apart in confusion. Project Prometheus began firing. Metal rods fell from orbit, each one moving at incredible speed. They did not target Vrelnath ships directly. They did not need to. Each strike was calculated to knock ships into specific trajectories. Trajectories that intersected with the Leviathan creatures rising from Earth's oceans. The Leviathan bioforms were hungry. They had been asleep for centuries. Now they woke up and found themselves surrounded by metal. Beautiful, exotic alien metal. They began to feed. Their teeth could chew through Vrelnath armor like paper. They multiplied as they ate, growing larger and more numerous. What started as a few dozen creatures became hundreds. Then thousands of Vrelnath ships tried to fight back. But their weapon systems were failing. The nanomachines were everywhere, eating through circuits and processors. Some ships managed to fire. Some even hit the Leviathan creatures. But for every creature destroyed, 3 more appeared. The bioforms reproduced faster than they could be killed. Thex watched from the tactical center in horror. This was not a battle. This was an execution. Every Vrelnath strength had been studied and countered. Their superior shields meant nothing when kinetic strikes came from above, and biological horrors attacked from below. Their advanced weapons could not target enemies that were too small to see or too many to count. Their perfect tactics required communication that no longer worked. The humans had not defended Earth during the invasion. They had been herding the Vrelnath into a killing field. Every retreat had positioned Vrelnath forces exactly where the ancient weapons could reach them. Every surrender offer had brought more ships closer to Earth. The whole conquest had been a trap, and the Empire had rushed in eagerly. Zira, the Vrelnath bioweapons specialist, tried to deploy emergency countermeasures, but she found her systems already compromised. A virus had infected the Vrelnath computers. It was elegant and simple, written by someone who understood both human and alien code. G1's cultural exchanges had not been naive optimism. They were reconnaissance. Every response from the Vrelnath had taught her more about their computer systems. The Vrelnath fleet began to die. Not slowly, not with honor, with brutal efficiency. Kinetic strikes crippled engines. Leviathan bioforms tore through disabled ships. Nanomachines disabled any vessel that tried to escape. In the space around Earth, a graveyard formed. Broken ships, dead warriors. The pride of an empire destroyed in hours. In Geneva, Krath collapsed. His forearms hung limp. His mandibles clicked in shock. He could not believe what was happening. The primitives had defeated the Empire. The species with chemical rockets had destroyed a fleet that had conquered 23 worlds. Taeyang looked at him with sad eyes. "This is what I tried to warn you about," he said quietly. "Not human strength. Human trauma. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning to weaponize everything. Then we had the wisdom to lock it all away. We wanted to forget. We wanted to be better. But you would not let us. You forced us to remember what we were capable of. Earth was never a prize to be claimed. It was a snare baited with apparent weakness, and you walked right into it." Outside, the Vrelnath fleet continued to fall. Inside the ceremony hall, Krath sat broken among his elite warriors. They had come to Earth expecting another easy victory. Instead, they found something worse than a strong enemy. They found a species that knew how to lose everything and still find a way to win. A species that had mastered the art of survival through desperation and horror. The trap had closed. The Vrelnath were caught, and there was no escape. 3 days after the trap closed, it was over. The Vrelnath fleet was gone. 300 ships had entered Earth's system. None remained functional. Orbital space around Earth looked like a scrapyard. Broken hulls drifted in silence. Leviathan creatures, satisfied after their feast, swam back to the deep ocean trenches. The nanomachines returned to their desert facility. The orbital weapons went silent. Earth had survived. But the cost was terrible. Millions of humans had died during the invasion. Cities were destroyed. Infrastructure was broken. Entire regions had been bombed from orbit. The Vrelnath attack had lasted only 7 days, but those 7 days had changed everything. Now came the hard question. What should humanity do with the survivors? Commander Krath was captured in the ruins of Geneva. His ceremonial armor was burned and broken. 2 of his 4 limbs were damaged. The mighty conqueror who had destroyed 23 worlds now sat in a human detention cell, clicking his mandibles in disbelief. How had primitives defeated the Empire? How was this possible? Taeyang visited him. He brought medical supplies and made sure Krath's injuries were treated. The Vrelnath commander did not understand. Why help the enemy? Why give comfort to someone who tried to conquer your world? In the Empire, defeated enemies were killed or enslaved. Never helped. Never treated with kindness, Taeyang explained patiently. Humans had learned that endless revenge only created endless war. Someone had to break the cycle. Someone had to choose differently. Humanity thought other species might be capable of the same growth. That was why they tried negotiation first. That was why they gave warnings. Krath laughed bitterly. The Empire was vast, 47 star systems, thousands of warships, millions of soldiers. Earth might have destroyed one fleet, but the response would be overwhelming. He expected to be executed soon, but promised that his death would be avenged. The Empire would return with everything they had. Earth would burn. Taeyang's response was quiet but chilling. The trap was not just for this fleet. Those 47 systems, humanity now knew their exact locations. The Empire's communication network? It was compromised the moment Vrelnath forces occupied Earth's facilities. Every military installation, every fleet position, every strategic asset, all mapped, all analyzed. The Vrelnath had opened their entire empire to Earth's intelligence networks when they connected to human systems. Krath's mandibles stopped clicking. He understood what that meant. Earth knew everything. Ship designs, military protocols, resource locations, weak points. If humanity wanted to strike back, they could cripple the Empire before it recovered. In Earth's command center, heated debates filled the room. Nari presented the military case. The 47 weapon installations were still operational. Earth had complete intelligence on the Vrelnath Empire. They could attack first, destroy the Empire's ability to threaten anyone ever again. Project Prometheus alone could devastate Vrelnath military bases within months. The Empire would never recover. Youngji Ko, a philosopher who had helped rebuild Earth after the Third World War, argued against. If humanity used these weapons for conquest, they would become what they fought against. The weapons were locked away for a reason. Using them to destroy the Vrelnath Empire meant abandoning everything humanity had learned. It meant becoming murderers on a galactic scale. Jiwan offered a different approach. Use the intelligence for communication instead of destruction. Contact the 23 species the Vrelnath had conquered. Tell them what happened to the fleet. Show them that the Empire could be defeated. Support their freedom movements. help them liberate themselves. Sungho Bay spoke for the colony worlds. Earth had nearly died. If the Vrelnath returned with greater force, humanity might not survive. But if they struck first, billions of Vrelnath civilians would die, including children, including people who never chose conquest. How could humanity balance survival against becoming mass murderers? The debate went on for days. Every option had terrible consequences. Do nothing and risk another invasion, strike first and become the monsters, help rebellions and maybe start a galactic war. There were no good choices. Only choices between different kinds of bad. Taeyang found himself making the final decision. As Earth's ambassador, the choice fell to him. He thought about everyone who had died. Minho, who sacrificed himself at Unity Station. Haijin, who showed the galaxy that humans could hurt their enemies. The millions of civilians killed in the bombardments. They all deserved justice. But he also thought about why the weapons were locked away. After the Third World War, after the nuclear exchanges and biological plagues, after humanity stood at the edge of extinction, they made a choice. Never again. They proved they could build weapons to end worlds. The real question was whether they could choose not to use them. Taeyang made his decision. Earth would not strike first. The 47 installations would not be used to destroy the Vrelnath Empire. Humanity would not become conquerors, but neither would they be victims again. A message would be sent to the Empire. It would include complete video documentation of what happened to the conquest fleet. Every detail, every weapon system. It would include technical specifications of 3 of the 47 installations. Just 3, enough to prove the threat was real. Enough to show what Earth could do if forced. The message would offer terms. Leave humanity alone. Leave human colonies alone. Do that, and the 47 installations go back to sleep. Threaten Earth again, and every Vrelnath world would learn what it means to face an enemy that weaponized its own survival instinct. It was not peace. It was not forgiveness. It was a warning backed by proven capability. The Vrelnath had one chance to choose differently, one chance to listen to what they refused to hear before. The message was transmitted using captured Vrelnath technology. It reached the Empire's capital within days. The Imperial Council gathered to watch. They saw their fleet dismantled with surgical precision. They reviewed technical specifications of weapons that made their arsenal look primitive. They saw detailed maps of their own military bases, proof that Earth could strike anywhere. And they saw Taeyang's face as he delivered the final warning. The same face that had tried to warn Krath. The same face Krath had laughed at. But the message ended differently this time. We are not conquerors. We are survivors. We built these weapons because we had to. We locked them away because we chose to. We have shown you we can destroy you. Now we ask, can you choose differently? The trap remains. Whether it closes again is your decision. Choose wisely. We will not warn you a third time. The Vrelnath Council debated for weeks. Hardliners demanded immediate revenge. How dare primitives threaten the Empire? They should gather every ship and burn Earth to ashes. But others, like Thex, who had survived the massacre, spoke against it. He had watched the trap unfold. He had analyzed Earth's strategy. His conclusion terrified the Council. The humans were not lucky. They were precise. Every action was calculated. Every sacrifice measured. They fought like no species the Empire had encountered before. They fought like a species that had survived fighting themselves. If the Empire attacked again, the result would be the same. Except next time, Earth might not show restraint. The Empire sent a response. Not an apology. Not an acceptance of peace. But an acknowledgement. The Vrelnath Empire would not contest human space. Not from respect. From cold calculation, the cost would exceed any possible gain. It was the closest thing to peace the Empire had ever offered a species that defeated them. On Earth, people had mixed feelings. Some celebrated. The threat was over. Earth was safe. But others, like Somin Pak, who lost her family and soul, felt betrayed. Why show mercy to monsters? Why let the Vrelnath live when human children died? Taeyang met with survivors and faced their anger. He had no easy answers. Yes, the Vrelnath deserved punishment. Yes, Earth would be safer if the Empire was destroyed. But becoming the destroyers meant losing what made humanity worth saving. The 47 installations represented humanity's darkest capabilities. Using them for conquest meant becoming what they defeated. Slowly, painfully, Earth began to heal. Cities were rebuilt. Memorials were erected for the dead, and the 47 installations were sealed again with new security protocols. Multiple people had to agree before they could be activated, safeguards against any single leader choosing genocide. The weapons remained. The knowledge remained. But so did the choice. Humanity had proven it could defend itself without becoming conquerors. They had shown the galaxy that strength could be measured in restraint. That survival did not require becoming monsters. The Vrelnath had refused to hear the warning. They paid the price. Now the galaxy knew. Earth was not prey. Earth was a trap, and it remained set, waiting to see if anyone else would make the same mistake. 5 years passed. Earth rebuilt slowly. The scars remained visible. Buildings stood half-finished. Memorials filled city centers. But life continued. Humans proved they were good at surviving. They had practiced. News of Earth's victory spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The 23 species conquered by the Vrelnath heard the story through secret channels. At first, many did not believe it. The Empire was invincible. The Empire had ruled for 800 years. How could primitives from a single world defeat them? But the evidence became impossible to deny. Intercepted communications, testimony from surviving Vrelnath soldiers, and most telling, the Empire's own silence. They did not boast about conquering Earth. They did not add it to their list of victories. They simply never mentioned it. That silence spoke louder than any announcement. The Telrathi were the first to act. They were an aquatic species, the Empire's first conquest 800 years ago. They remembered what freedom felt like, passed down through generations in secret songs sung in the deep water. If humans could defeat the Empire, maybe others could too. They began organized resistance, not violent uprising, systematic noncompliance, refusing orders, working slowly, making mistakes. The Empire cracked down brutally, but the seed was planted. Other conquered species watched and learned. If the Telrathi could resist, so could they. Jiwan led a covert operation from Earth. Using humanity's knowledge of Vrelnath communication systems, she contacted resistance leaders across the Empire. She did not offer weapons. She offered something more dangerous: hope and information, ways to communicate securely, tactics for passive resistance. Most importantly, the story of how Earth turned weakness into a trap. The Vrelnath realized too late what was happening. Their empire, stable for centuries, began to fracture. Not from external attack, from internal collapse. The conquered species saw that resistance was possible. The Empire's own arrogance became its weakness. They had taught the galaxy to fear them. Now Earth taught the galaxy that fear could be overcome. Species fleeing the Empire came to Earth seeking refuge. Some wanted weapons. Some wanted military training. Some wanted Earth to use those terrible installations to free their worlds. Taiyang had to explain repeatedly that Earth would not become an empire. The 47 weapons existed only as deterrent. They would not be used for conquest, not even liberation. Instead, Earth offered different help, diplomatic support, technology sharing. Most importantly, the lesson of restraint. Nari established training programs teaching defensive strategies to species facing oppression, not how to conquer, how to survive, how to make yourself too expensive to subjugate. Yunbi Shin, a young diplomat who grew up hearing stories of the invasion, became humanity's ambassador to the Telrathi. She helped them establish independence not through violence but through economic and political pressure. The empire founded had neither resources nor will to reconquer every rebelling species simultaneously. They were stretched too thin. Not everyone on Earth celebrated. Selman Pak, who lost her family and soul, questioned every decision to help other species. Her voice represented millions who felt humanity showed mercy to monsters. Why should the Vrelnath Empire continue existing while human children were dead? Why help aliens when Earth still needed rebuilding? Taeyang met with survivors regularly. He faced their anger directly. He had no easy answers. Yes, the Vrelnath deserved punishment. Yes, humanity would be safer if the Empire was destroyed. But becoming destroyers meant abandoning what made humanity worth saving. The 47 installations represented humanity's darkest capabilities. Using them for galactic conquest meant becoming the very thing they defeated. Some accepted his reasoning. Others never did. Democracy meant living with disagreement. Earth moved forward despite the divisions. 20 years after the invasion, Taeyang was old. He retired from diplomatic service and returned to Seoul. The city had been rebuilt, better than before. Memorials honored those who died. Hyejin Seo's statue stood in the city center, a Marine captain who proved humans could fight. Minho Cha's name was engraved on the rebuilt Unity Station, a reminder of sacrifice. The galaxy was different now. The Vrelnath Empire still existed but diminished. Half their conquered species had gained independence, some through rebellion, others through negotiation facilitated by Earth diplomats. The Empire no longer expanded. They had learned their lesson. Earth had become something unexpected. Not an empire, not a military superpower, but a symbol. Proof that a species could survive its own worst nature, that weapons designed for annihilation could be locked away. That strength could be measured in restraint rather than conquest. Jiwan, now Director of Interspecies Relations, received a message from a distant world, a new species just achieving spaceflight. They had developed weapons that terrified them. Nuclear devices, biological weapons, chemical agents. They wondered if they should destroy the knowledge, pretend it never existed. Jiwan's response was careful and honest. You cannot unlearn that knowledge, but you can choose how to use it. Lock it away. Build safeguards. Hope you never need it, but know that if someone threatens you, if they refuse warnings, you have capability to defend yourself. The trap exists. Pray you never need to spring it. She sent them Earth's story, not as propaganda. As education, this is what desperation looks like. This is what survival costs. This is the burden of knowing you can destroy worlds, and this is the wisdom of choosing not to. Taiyang watched the sunset over Seoul from his apartment window. He thought about that first contact with the Vrelnath. He tried to warn them. They laughed, and Earth became the snare that ended them. Not through strength alone, through the terrible wisdom of survivors who learned to fear their own capabilities. The 47 installations remained sealed. Humanity hoped they stayed that way forever. But if another arrogant empire refused to listen, if another species mistook restraint for weakness, the trap waited. Ready, patient, terrible. Young Koreans grew up learning about the invasion. It was taught in schools alongside the Third World War. Both were lessons in what happens when species forget the cost of violence. Both were warnings about paths not to take. The children learned to be proud of Earth's victory, but also to be frightened by what victory required. Taeyang sometimes visited the memorials. He read names of people who died, soldiers who fought, civilians who suffered. He remembered their faces. He carried their weight. The decision to spare the empire had been his. The consequences were his to bear, but he also saw the results. The Telrathi swimming free in their oceans, the Kelrathi building their own ships, the Marathi writing their own laws. Species that might have suffered for another 800 years instead found freedom within 20. Not because Earth conquered their oppressors, because Earth showed them that oppressors could be defeated. Was it worth the risk? Would it have been better to destroy the empire completely? Taeyang did not know. Perhaps future generations would judge his choice as foolish. Perhaps the empire would rebuild and threaten Earth again. Perhaps showing mercy was actually weakness, but he believed in the choice anyway. Because the alternative was becoming what humanity had fought so hard to move beyond. The alternative was accepting that the galaxy would always be ruled by whoever had the biggest weapons and the least hesitation to use them. Someone had to break that cycle. Someone had to choose differently. On his last day, Taeyang recorded a final message. It would be added to the archives, stored alongside the technical specifications of the 47 installations. Future generations would hear it before accessing the weapons. A reminder of why they existed and why they must stay locked. The message was simple. We built these weapons because we had no choice. We locked them away because we did have a choice. They are humanity's gift to the galaxy, not the weapons themselves, the wisdom to fear them, the strength to resist using them, the understanding that true power lies in restraint. If you are hearing this message, it means someone has threatened Earth again, someone has refused to hear warnings, someone has mistaken mercy for weakness. You have the capability to respond. You have weapons that can end worlds, but before you use them, remember what they cost us. Remember what using them will cost you. Remember that becoming monsters to fight monsters means monsters win regardless. Choose wisely. The trap remains, but it should only spring when all other options are gone, when survival itself demands it. Not before. Taeyang died peacefully in his sleep at age 97. His funeral was attended by representatives from 30 species. The Vrelnath sent a delegation too, not an official one, but young Vrelnath who had grown up hearing stories about Earth, who wanted to understand the species that defeated their empire without destroying it. They stood at the memorial and read the inscription. Ambassador Taeyang Park, the man who warned them, the man they refused to hear, the man who gave them a second chance anyway. Earth's gift to the galaxy was not the 47 weapons. It was the knowledge that weapons alone do not make you strong, that survival requires more than firepower, that the hardest choice is often the right choice, that mercy and strength are not opposites. The Vrelnath had refused to hear the warning. Earth became the snare that ended them. But the story did not end with destruction. It ended with